Implement the promises it made a few years ago.
Tonight on News at 9, Qatar in crisis. United Arab Emirates bans support. Saudi Arabia calls for change and the diplomatic crisis continues.
First at 9. This is Derana 24/7.
Also making headlines tonight, fight against tobacco. Sri Lanka to ban tobacco cultivation by 2020. Sri Lanka and India. Foreign Minister meets Indian Premier and discuss bilateral ties. Bad weather. 3-story building sinks at Ginnigathena due to continuous rain. And commodity levy increase. Ministry says no change in sugar price. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to News at 9 right here on Derana 24/7. I'm Mahesh Johnny, and we begin tonight in India, where Minister of Foreign Affairs Ravi Karunanayake met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and conveyed the Sri Lankan government's commitment to continue strengthening the close partnership with India. This is Ravi Karunanayake's first overseas visit since taking office as the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
During the meeting yesterday at the official residence of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Foreign Affairs Minister Ravi Karunanayake thanked India for extending quick assistance in the aftermath of the floods and landslides. Prime Minister Modi, while conveying condolences for the loss of lives and destruction caused by the recent floods, expressed continued assistance to Sri Lanka. They also discussed strengthening bilateral ties in the spheres in the areas of commerce, tourism and culture. On the issue of Indian fishermen, Minister Karunanayake told the Indian Premier that Sri Lanka will be able to release 42 of the 142 fishing boats in Sri Lankan custody following legal procedure. Meanwhile, Minister Ravi Karunanayake also met his Indian counterpart Sushma Swaraj at Jawaharlal Nehru Bhavan yesterday. Talks focused on developing bilateral relations.
Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faisal Mustafa announced that steps have been taken to present the amended delimitation draft bill before Parliament and requested all political parties to prepare for the local government elections. The minister made this announcement following a meeting held at the Election Commission yesterday.
Speaking to media subsequent to the meeting, Minister Faisal Mustafa added that over 50 amendments had to be made to the delimitation draft bill prior to being gazetted, which delayed the process. He also requested all political parties to prepare for the local government elections, as measures have been taken to hold elections once relevant draft bills are passed in Parliament.
We have taken all steps to conduct the election. The bill, which amends Act number 22 of 2012, has also been gazetted, and soon as these amendments are passed by Parliament, the elections could be held.
The Chief Minister of Eastern Province, Nazir Ahmed, says certain provisions which have been granted to the Provincial Councils by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution have not yet been implemented. The Chief Minister made the remarks addressing media following a discussion with a delegation of the European Union at the SLMC headquarters yesterday.
They did not provide most of the powers according to the 13th Amendment. We do not have land and police powers. Powers are given to education, agriculture, rural industry and health sectors, but they do not allocate adequate money for those. No additional time is required for the implementation of the 13th Amendment, and it could be done now with the Treasury releasing money. Only then will we have the capacity to develop and solve people's problems.
Meanwhile, he also expressed his views regarding the electoral reforms.
When I met representatives from 10 countries, including the officials from the European Union, I said electoral reforms are not yet over, and the process has been dragging on for more than 2.5 years.
In other local stories, with Olympic silver medalist Santika Jayasinghe recently saying she intends to auction her medal, Minister of Sports Dasari Jayasekara says that he intends to introduce laws preventing the sale of or auction of any medal won by an athlete in an international event. He made these remarks at the cabinet meeting held today.
When the 2015 government was appointed, she did not have any profession. In 2016, I requested through a cabinet paper to provide her a salary of 60,000 rupees up to 60 years with a fuel allowance of 15,000. But the cabinet approved to give her 60,000 rupees until 2020. She said that the Ministry of Sports has done nothing to her. So I told her to remember that the salary is being paid to you by the Ministry of Sports. When she was sick at the Dirthalava hospital, I deployed a helicopter for her by 8 a.m. The Defence Secretary knows about this. She was taken to hospital by ambulance, which belongs to the Ministry of Sports. That is how we treated her. If the medal has been auctioned, the Ministry of Sports will buy it, because this medal belongs to the country. She cannot sell it personally. How much did the government spend to bring this medal to the country? I'm going to implement a law. No medal will be sold, and all medals won will be owned by the country.
Various decisions were taken during the cabinet meeting today. Cabinet decides to strengthen the capital of the People's Bank from 5 billion rupees, while a national policy and strategic plan for prevention and management of accidents in Sri Lanka was also among the decisions.
Already we have set up 24 A&E services in the country, and we are expecting another 14 to be set up in the country.
A decision was also taken to improve the national policy on sanitization. A decision to construct a dedicated economic center in the eastern province and obtaining consultation services was also made. Also focusing on disposal of waste dumped in various places due to recent disaster situation, the cabinet approved the decision of the Ministry of Disaster Management to provide additional funds of 100 million rupees to purchase required vehicles and equipment.
Welcome back, everyone. On to one of our international headline stories. The diplomatic crisis in the Middle East continues, and West African nations Mauritania is the latest to sever diplomatic ties with Qatar. The United Arab Emirates today announced a 15-year jail term and a 500,000 dirham fine for those that express support for Qatar. Saudi Arabia has called on its tiny neighbor to implement several measures in order to restore diplomatic ties. Meanwhile, Turkish officials confirm their intent to fast-track legislation that would allow the movement of troops to Qatar in an apparent statement of support to the increasingly isolated state.
In a statement to Arabic media this morning, the Attorney General of the UAE said that strict and firm action will be taken against anyone who shows sympathy or any form of bias towards Qatar, or against anyone who objects to the position of the United Arab Emirates, whether it be through the means of social media or any type of written, visual or verbal form. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister said yesterday that Qatar needed to take several steps, including ending its support of Palestinian militant group Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, to restore ties with Arab states.
We want to see Qatar implement the promises it made a few years back with regard to its support for extremist groups, with regards to its hostile media, with regards to its interference in the affairs of other countries.
Turkey's parliament, meanwhile, is expected to fast-track existing legislation to allow its troops to be deployed to a Turkish military base in Qatar after Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan criticized the move to isolate Qatar.
We are and we will do everything we can to resolve this crisis. I hope that all sanctions against Qatar will be lifted as soon as possible, because I believe that classifying Qatar as a terror suspect is a severe accusation.
The diplomatic row has put pressure on travel on the region, as Qatari nationals have been ordered to return home, but the countries requiring their exit have shut down direct travel routes. Kuwait has become a main hub for homebound Qataris, as it has not cut ties with Qatar, and its emir is acting as a mediator between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, after US media linked Russian hackers to the Qatar crisis, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov responded.
I think that CNN, like some other mass media outlets that are not fully worthy of this definition and who are waiting for the type of story that stinks or some scandal to automatically, without any evidence, add this episode to the list of Russian sins, Russian hackers or someone else linked to the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, on the home front, former Foreign Affairs Minister Rohit Abogolagama called on the country to take a stern stance on the issue of extremism.
So on a moral judgment, are we going to endorse countries that are part of extremism and that leads to terrorism? So I think that is the moral ground on which Sri Lanka must make an independent assessment and take a position in line with what is right for the world. Otherwise, we can't be visible in the world if you are going to be just silent and be on the side.
Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Rajatha Senaratne insisted that the Qatari currency would remain valid in Sri Lanka.
The International Monetary Fund is the institution that decides what currency is valid. We will stop accepting the Qatar Rial only if the International Monetary Fund directs us as such. That is the international bond. So the Qatar Rial is allowed here.
Well, let's get more on that story. Joining me now live from our newsroom is Other Derana's Chief International Affairs Analyst, Anuradha Herath. Anuradha, thank you very much for joining us. Let me ask you, now 2-3 days ago, suddenly Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait and several other countries have been severing diplomatic relationship with Qatar. And Qatar continues to say that they have no idea as to what's going on. So what exactly led to the escalation of this diplomatic crisis?
So, of course, as we know, the latest story is really that there has been some Russian, involvement in this issue as well. But just before coming here, I spoke to one of my journalist colleagues in Doha, and she was saying that they are not reporting on that particular story because they haven't received verifiable information as such. So that's not to say that it, had happened or it did not happen, but I think we need to sort of wait and see to see if that is actually true. But other factors, of course, one perspective is the role of Iran, right? So Qatar has strong ties with Iran. That is not too favorable in terms of other Middle East countries, especially those backed by the US. And the second perspective is that, of course, Qatar has always been sort of the problem child in the region, if you will, right? So not sort of towing the line of the U.S. as easily as some of the other countries. So for all these reasons, I think, they're hoping that putting pressure, this level of pressure on Qatar may get them to change their stand a little bit.
Well, bringing that issue in the Middle East towards our region, now we understand in modern times, a regional issue is not kept regionally. Even yesterday, our foreign minister said that this is not going to make a major impact in Sri Lanka, and we hope that it would not. But there are so much of migrant workers in that region. So instability in the region, how do you see that impacting Sri Lanka and our migrant force?
In my opinion, I think it really have to do with the duration of this crisis. If you remember, we had a similar situation somewhere around 2014 where some of the ambassadors of these particular countries were removed from Doha and so forth, and it lasted for approximately a year or so, right? But this is a much greater escalation of the crisis. So if it goes on and drags on for years and years, then I don't think anyone can deny that there won't be an impact on us and other countries as well. But if it's really short term, then maybe we'll be lucky and not have too much of an impact. So I really think it depends on the duration of the crisis.
Terrorism is the subject that is being spoken in this particular incident in the Middle East. And I want to take your attention to what's happening in the United Kingdom. Yesterday, British Prime Minister Theresa May says that in order to combat terrorism in Britain and in other parts of Europe, that they may have to change human rights laws in order to make sure that they combat terrorism problem that is there in their country. Now, human rights is something that Britain and most of the Western countries have been telling us that we have to uphold to a higher extent. So what do you take of this?
Well, it is really stunning, isn't it, that the policies have so drastically changed in actually such a brief period of time. I mean, I can personally say I can personally remember how intense these discussions were with the former leaders of our country and their country with regards to human rights, how intense those discussions were. And all of a sudden, you've got the two leaders of two of the most powerful nations in the world really boldly coming out, not covertly, but really coming out and saying that maybe human rights needs to take, a back seat in terms of protecting the people and national security and these types of things. So I think it's a real stunning development. But I think the change there really is because the people, right? It's now a more personal problem for them, not something that has taken place in a faraway place that they can't really personally relate to. Now it's on their own soil, which I think is really the key factor in this policy change. But it'll really depend on if the people really are backing these decisions, and that's, we have to wait till elections to understand that dimension.
Certainly indeed. Anuradha, we have to leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us. Anuradha Herath, Other Derana's Chief International Affairs Analyst. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, the Qatar Airways country manager told Ada Derana that the airline's operations are continuing as normal with no disruptions to flights, with the exception of the 4 countries Qatar has been restricted to fly. Welcome back, everyone. The recent speculation suggesting the presence of plastic rice in the Sri Lankan market, the Ministry of Health says samples have been sent for testing. The director of the Food Control Administration Unit at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Lakshman Gamlath, made the matter evident, saying that rice samples have been sent for chemical analysis.
Various reports on sticky basmati rice surfaced recently from across the country. Speaking to Ada Derana, the locals in Mathura said rice which was distributed as relief aid in the Mathura district showed unusual characteristics.
We got this rice as relief aid, but we didn't eat because we are scared.
No one ate the rice which was given as relief aid since we saw it on TV. Since we experienced a difference in the rice, we did not eat.
We need a solution for this matter, whether it's edible or not.
The Divisional Secretariat has requested the locals not to eat the rice given as relief aid until further notice. Meanwhile, a farmer in the Galle district has come forward saying the questionable characteristics are also visible in the rice farmed by himself.
I saw news on plastic mixed rice. I have cultivated 3 varieties of rice this season. I cooked the rice, compressed it into a ball and smashed it on the ground to see it bounce back up like a rubber ball. I discovered the rice I cultivated had the alleged qualities of plastic rice.
In the meantime, the Food Control Unit of the Ministry of Health has sent samples of rice for laboratory tests.
So far, we have not detected any such rice to be of plastic rice. Therefore, the report that had been published should be confirmed with laboratory reports. We have taken samples and sent to the laboratories for chemical analysis. Within about few days, we will get the reports. Once, if anybody is suspecting that rice is of plastic origin, there are 3 tests that they can do at home. Having performed those tests, if you suspect that is plastic rice, then you can refer a sample to either to the PHI or to the area MOH or a sample to the Food Control Unit in the Ministry of Health.
Dr. Gamlath displayed how normal rice react to the said tests.
These are some of the market samples we collected from various places in and around Colombo. You can take some grains from a sample of rice and put it in water. When you put it in water, if it is plastic, it will float. So the normal rice will go down. Now if you do this, if it is plastic rice, it will quickly catch fire. You can't burn this because it's normal rice.
The Finance Ministry announced today that the special commodity levy on imported wet fish will be reduced by 25 rupees per kilogram with effect from today in consideration of the prevalent inclement weather. Accordingly, the commodity levy on imported wet fish will come down to 50 rupees per kilogram from 75 rupees. Meanwhile, the special commodity levy on imported white sugar was also increased by 10 rupees last night, raising it to 23 rupees from 13 rupees per kilo. The commodity levy on brown sugar was also increased to 25 rupees from 15 rupees per kilogram. Finance Ministry further announced that though the levy on sugar has been increased, it will not make any impact on the selling price of the sugar in the market, and the world market prices on sugar is continuously declining. Assistant Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, K.D. Ranasinghe, has been promoted to the position of Deputy Governor. He was in charge of Statistics, International Operations, Domestic Operations, Employees Provident Fund, Human Resources and Facilities Management Departments. The appointment was made in concurrence with the appointment of the Minister of Finance. The newly appointed Deputy Governor, K.D. Ranasinghe, carries 31 years of experience in the central bank in areas of economic and price stability and other agency functions. To the stock market now. The stock market closed flat despite above average turnover today, with all share price index lost 5 points and the S&P SL20 index losing 3 points. Ceylon Coal Stores contributed over half of today's 2.1 billion rupee turnover. Meanwhile, foreign investors were net buyers of 316 million rupees and accounted for 70% of market activity. We now have the daily market update with RM Sivanandan from the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Top 5 gainers of the day were SMB Leasing, Bedwala Resorts, Sri Lanka Finance, Swarnamal Financial Services and Blue Diamonds. While the top 5 losers were Citrus Kaduwa, Royal Palms Beach Hotel, Amanata Carfull, Palm Garden Hotel and Coal Stores.
The Sri Lankan rupee edged down today due to subtle dollar demands from importer and fewer exporters' greenback sales. Dealers said there was some optimism over expected inflows in the form of international assistance, which could help offset potential downward pressure on the Sri Lankan rupee. Rupee forwards were active, with spot next forwards trading at 152 rupees to 90 cents per dollar compared with yesterday's close. Now here's a look at how the rupee traded against other currencies during the day today. Welcome back everyone. On to sports. The Sri Lanka Volleyball Federation has announced the preliminary squad of 18 for the 19th Asia Senior Women's Volleyball Championships scheduled in Manila, Philippines from the 9th to the 17th of August. The squad includes 10 players from last year's South Asian Games silver medal winning team and 5 players from the Sri Lanka under-23 side, while Dinesha Priyadarshini, who led the South Asian Games side, is tipped to captain the squad. The squad compromises our players from the Army, Navy, Air Force and Police Sports Clubs, the Sri Lanka Ports Authority and MAS Casual Line. In cricket and into the Champions Trophy, England secured their place in the semi-finals after picking up their second win of the tournament, beating New Zealand by 87 runs last evening.
It's England versus New Zealand.
Having been put into bat, England piled on 310 runs in 49.5 overs before they were bowled out with half-centuries from Alex Hales, Joe Root and Jos Buttler.
Hales, another 50.
Adam Milne and Corey Anderson picked up 3 wickets each for the Kiwis, while Tim Southee picked up 2. Chasing 311, New Zealand were bowled out for 223, with Kane Williamson making the only noteworthy contribution with a 98-ball 87. Liam Plunkett spearheaded the English attack, picking up 4 for 55, while Jake Ball and Adil Rashid claimed 2 scalps apiece.
First side through to the semi-finals.
On to international news and to news that broke this evening. A Myanmar military plane carrying 120 people on board went missing over the Andaman Sea this evening, with the latest media reports saying some of its debris have been spotted in the sea by military craft dispatched to the area. The Myanmar's Army Chief's Office said that the aircraft disappeared off radar at 1:35 p.m. local time and that search and rescue is ongoing. There were 106 military personnel and family members and 14 crew on board. Attackers raided Iran's parliament and opened fire at the mausoleum of Ayatollah Khomeini a few kilometers south of Tehran this morning in near-simultaneous assault that left at least 12 dead. State media reported that 4 armed assailants attacked the country's parliament building this morning, with one of them detonating a suicide bomb while under siege from security forces. Half an hour later, an attacker detonated a suicide vest near the mausoleum of the Iranian Republic's founder, Ayatollah Khomeini. Time to take a look at the weather. Here's Katharina Chang from the Weather Centre.
Now we can expect the prevailing showers over the southwest part of the island to cease by the 10th of June. Now the wet weather will continue over the western, Sabragamo, central as well as the southern and northwestern provinces
while fairly strong winds of about 50 km per hour can be expected over the Polonnaruwa, Ampara, Batticaloa, Matale and Hambantota districts. Meanwhile, people in Ratapura can expect heavy showers over the next 24 hours, while temperatures may also vary between 27 and 33 degrees Celsius. That is it from the Weather Centre, but let us now take a look at the city-by-city forecast.
And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. News at 9 on Other Derana 24/7 will return tomorrow at the same time with Indi Variamuatha. Be sure to join us then. And before we go, we'd like to take you to Kaluthura, the city that is home to Kaluthura Bodhya and Kalu River picturesquely meets the sea. Once an important spice trading centre, the town's name is derived from the Kaluganga. In the 11th century, the town was temporarily made a capital on the orders of a South Indian prince. The location also boasts a fortification dating back from the times when Portuguese, Dutch and British vied for control of the area. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.